Hi everyone, welcome to the Feel Good Violin Club. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to solve a bouncy bow. And the first thing to know about this is that in a lot of ways the bow is just naturally bouncy, and this is of course very useful to us when we're doing strokes that are intentionally bouncy, like a sautille or a ricochet. But because the bow is naturally sensitive to vibration, this is a process for all of us to learn how to control it. There are a few reasons why our bows might feel bouncy and out of control. We haven't really prepared for something. We're trying to do too many things at once. Our bow holds are maybe sort of stiff or rigid or tight, or there's some sort of problem with the distribution of weight in your bow hold. So in today's video, we're going to be addressing all of these things. Let's get into it. So the place to start if you're dealing with an out-of-control bouncy bow is your bow hold. Having a soft, supple bow hold is absolutely essential for acting as a natural shock absorber for your bow. If your hands and your joints are stiff and rigid, the natural bounce and vibration that just happens with your bow has no place to live itself out except in the stick. An important thing to be aware of here is that often by trying to control the bounce, this actually makes us stiff and tense and rigid, and usually this only makes the bouncing worse. So it's better to think about allowing suppleness and softness in your bow hand, allowing natural weight into the string rather than fighting. Both your hand and the string are supple enough, if you allow them to be, to act as natural shock and vibration absorbers. Okay, now let's talk about preparation. You know that thing that happens when you're doing a retake and your bow bounces when you land? Let's talk about that. There's an important thing to know about just the basic physical makeup of your bow. It is much heavier here at the frog and much lighter up here at the tip, which means it's much more likely for your bow to bounce in the middle and upper half of your bow. And now this is just information. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't land your bow in the middle or upper half. You totally can, but it just means that you have to do it with some care. You have to be careful not to come from too far away or approach the spring with too much speed or energy, or the bow will just spring back. What I often talk about with my students if they need to land in the middle of the bow, which is totally common, we have to land in the middle of the bow all the time, is to land just gently. I call it a soft landing. Almost always, in most situations when we're playing, we do want to land the bow before playing. We don't want to try to do the two things at once. There are some exceptions, there are always exceptions, but generally speaking, we want the bow to have landed at least for a millisecond before we play. This allows the bow and the string in your hand to all work together to settle the bow before you start. If you want to land really cleanly, try landing right at the frog or close to the frog. Because of all of the natural weight there, you can almost certainly just put the bow down and it just stays. You know when you get those bow bounces just moving from one string to another? Let's talk about that. I've actually been thinking about this one a lot recently because it wasn't something I could put my finger on right away. Like, why would just changing string make it so that our bow feels kind of unstable? But I've realized it's because we need to prepare. In order to have really comfortable, fluid string crossings, we need to kind of ease into the string crossing before we're ready to play the new string. So if I demonstrated this really slowly, my next note is open D. So while I'm still on this B flat, it's like my elbow, my whole arm are already rocking and tilting toward the D string so that by the time I get there, my bow feels stable. Now let's return to that soft, supple bow hold. Sometimes when you're playing just like a long legato stroke, you don't necessarily feel like that is super stable or steady, or maybe sometimes you just feel sort of unstable and unsteady at the frog. Let's talk about those. Often these two problems have something to do with an improper distribution of weight in your bow hand. When we're doing a nice long stroke, starting at the frog, it's important that the weight of your bow hand be balanced toward your pinky finger. And as you draw the bow out to the tip, that weight transfers from the back of your hand toward the front of your hand, so that by the time you get to the tip, most of the weight of your bow hand is in either just your index finger or maybe your first two fingers. And if you're feeling some weird bounce in the middle of your bow, it may be because the distribution of weight or the transfer is happening too soon, or maybe it's delayed in some way, which is causing the bounce. I want to say here too that even if you're doing everything properly, it is still possible for you to feel a little bit of subtle vibration in your bow. That's because, like, you know, who can draw like a perfectly straight line on a piece of paper? There's always a little bit of motion and unsteadiness just inside our bodies, and the bow and the stick, they're both so sensitive that they just pick up on that. Last thing, if you are someone who feels unstable and bouncy at the frog, I would first check in with that weight distribution thing to make sure that you're feeling more weight towards the back of your hand, towards your pinky, but also think about using larger muscle groups. It's really easy to feel kind of constricted and tight when you're there, and the way to feel a little more open and less constricted there is to think of using larger muscle groups. Imagine that your bow changes are really being led by the back of your upper arm. And that will really help smooth and even out some unsteadiness and bow changes at the frog. I think I could so easily talk about any one of these solutions much more in depth and much longer, but I'm trying to keep my videos a little more concise. So if you have questions or other suggestions for bouncy bow solutions, I hope you will share with us in the comments. And if anything in this video was helpful to you, like and hit that subscribe button. Subscribing is the #1 way you can support this channel, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you, and see you next time.